Hello, everyone. Today I'll be presenting a study titled Mental Health Trajectories Over the COVID-19 Pandemic Among Young Adults Reporting Adverse Childhood Experiences. The purpose of this research was to examine how depression, anxiety, hostility, and stress changed across the pandemic among young adults with different levels of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Previous research showed that people with high ACEs tend to have greater vulnerability in times of major stress, including during COVID-19. This study extended that work by tracking whether those mental health differences continued across the full pandemic before, during, and after the peak periods. Overall, the researchers found that young adults with high ACEs and high COVID 19 stress consistently showed worse mental health across every phase of the pandemic. This highlights how individuals with early adversity remain a high risk group during major crisis and may need targeted support. This study used a prospective multi-wave panel designed based on the Niagara Longitudinal Heart Study. A total of 171 young adults completed 4 waves of data: a pre-COVID baseline, early 2020, the 2021 peak, and a post-peak assessment in 2022. All surveys were completed online. The researchers used a Bayesian multivariate mixed model regression to examine how ACEs interacted with COVID related stressors to predict changes in the mental health symptoms over time. First, ACEs were measured with the CTES 2.0, a 14-item measure covering 8 domains such as emotional abuse, witnessing intimate partner violence, and family substance use. Scores range from 0 to 4. COVID 19 stressors were assessed through an online survey covering 5 domains: emotional, family and financial stress, lifestyle changes, substance use stress, and community support. Mental health outcomes include a CESD for depression, SCL90R subscales for anxiety and hostility, and the PSS14 for perceived stress. Age, sex, and education served as covariates in all analysis. The researchers hypothesized that young adults with higher ACE scores would show worse mental health trajectories across all phases of the pandemic, especially when also experiencing higher levels of COVID-related stress. They predicted elevated depression, anxiety, hostility, and perceived stress for those with high ACEs. Across all 4 waves, individuals with higher ACEs and higher COVID 19 stress displayed consistently worse mental health symptoms. Depression increased from baseline to the peak of the pandemic from about 15.8 to 18.2, before declining post peak to around baseline levels. Anxiety showed a similar pattern, rising during the peak and falling afterward. Hostility rose early in the pandemic as well, though it later decreased. Perceived stress stayed relatively stable and was not statistically significant. Specific stressors also mattered. Family and financial stress predicted higher depression for people with high ACEs, while substance use stress predicted higher hostility. Anxiety emerged as a central symptom, with stronger correlations to depression and hostility as the pandemic went on. Overall, young adults with higher ACEs showed persistent vulnerability throughout all phases. The results included both significant and non-significant findings, with statistical significance marked at the p less than 0.5 and p less than 0.01 levels. These outcomes highlight which effects were truly reliable across time, helping distinguish meaningful patterns from random variations and reinforcing the study's overall conclusion about persistence vulnerability among high ACE individuals. This study directly connects to several core concepts in our class. First, ACEs demonstrate how early experiences shape later development, aligning with theories of developmental continuity. Second, the emotional and behavioral patterns observed, such as heightened anxiety and stress response, fit with models of emotional regulation and stress reactivity. Third, young adults are considered a sensitive developmental period, and the pandemic acted as an added stressor that amplified pre-existing vulnerabilities for those with early adversity. Overall, these results align with cumulative risk models, which emphasize how early adversity combined with later stress leads to worse outcomes. The findings also fit within the developmental psychopathology framework showing how early trauma can influence mental health trajectories well into adulthood.